joy and be led forth with peace. The mountains and the hills will break forth before you. And then the chorus was, and all the trees of the field will clap their hands. And everybody was supposed to go, and the trees of the field will. And so we sang this over and over, and it was just this little kind of ditty. And I always kind of thought that we were singing that song to God, you know, that God is going to be going with joy somewhere. I didn't know where he was going. And that when he went there, the trees of the field were going to clap their hands. And so because we were pretending to be trees, we'd go clap our hands. It was kind of a Jewish kind of thing. But this verse doesn't say that God is the one who's going with joy. This verse doesn't say the trees are clapping for God. This verse doesn't say the mountains and the hills are going to do their thing before God. God says those things are going to do it for you. God says the trees of the field are going to clap their hands for you. God says you're the one who's going to be going out with joy and being led forth in peace. And the mountains and all of everything is going to sing for you. In front of you. Because God's word, if it gets into you, if it does its thing in you, you're going to be filled with joy and blessing. That's the last thing if you want to write it down. God's word offers joy and blessing. So as you come through this whole process, you can weigh yourself down in the sense of, okay, there have been many times I haven't obeyed God. But rather than getting into the guilt trip, I want to just simply remind you that God's word gives life. Whether it comes from the pages here or his spirit in your heart or the words spoken to you from a trusted godly friend, God's word gives life. And when he speaks, he gives life. One last thing to jot down. Those who hear and follow live. Those who hear and follow live. That's what it means to be in the flow of God's love. There have been a couple times in my life where I've experienced this. I remember one time I was out in California and I was just visiting some friends, hanging out with some friends, and we were at a school called Biola University, and something had happened. I don't even remember what it was, like a volleyball tournament or something. And while we were there, after the volleyball tournament thing was over, whatever it was, one of my friends said, you know what? Let's drive to the beach. And I thought, driving to the beach, it's like a 2-hour drive from where Biola was to the beach they wanted to go to. I said, are you sure you want to just drive to the beach? It's like 11 o'clock at night, okay? And they wanted to drive to the beach. And I thought, okay, this is kind of crazy, but you know what? I'm in California at the time. I was going to school in Chicago, and it wasn't that often that I got to see the beach. And I wouldn't say at the time, I wouldn't say that God had prompted me. I wouldn't say that God told me I should go to the beach. I wouldn't say any of that stuff. I just thought, okay, well, let's see where this goes. Let's see what happens. I said yes, and so we hopped in the car, and I was the one driving, of course, and so we drove however long it took us to get to the beach, and we couldn't find a parking place. The beach had actually closed their parking lots, and so we had to drive farther on. And we went further, so we drove for like another 20 minutes or so, and then another 20 minutes, and finally we found a spot on the side of the road that we could jump out of the car. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning, something like that. We jumped out of the car, and I happened to have my guitar in the back of the car, and someone said, hey, why don't you bring your guitar? Let's sing a couple songs. And I didn't have any chords. I didn't have any songs memorized, but I thought, well, we can wing this. We'll just see where it goes. And we go down to the beach, and we're sitting there. I've got my guitar on my lap, trying to figure out if I can actually play anything. Someone else is over next to me. Someone else is over next to me over here. And we're just kind of all sitting there just thinking. And I remember I somehow figured out how to do a little bit of the song, Crown Him with Many Crowns, but we didn't know all the verses, so we only sang the first verse like 3 times. And then we had a couple other songs that we did a little bit, and then at about 1:30, something amazing happened. We were looking out into the ocean, and all of us just got quiet because it was the weirdest thing. The waves, as they began to crash in, as the wave lifted up to just before it crashed over to make the white water, the face of the wave was glowing bright green. It was this bright green color. It was actually producing light. And then as it would crash and it would go back into white water, the glow would disappear and would just be gone. And then the next wave would come in, and as it began to crest, the front of it would glow, this bright green, and then it would crash and the glow would disappear. And we sat there for like 10 minutes just staring at this amazing thing that was going on in front of us in God's created world, just in absolute awe of what was going on. And I had an awareness of God's majesty that I'd never experienced before. Later, I found out that it's not that popular of an occurrence in Southern California, but that when these phytoplankton gather in enough quantities in the oceans, that they tend to get swept up into the waves, and when they do that, they glow in a condensed fashion, but then when the wave crashes, they all dissipate. So yeah, it was something naturally existing. It wasn't like God did a miracle and said, let's make the waves glow, bang. But he did, because he's the one who made those plants, or animals, whatever plankton are. He's the one who made those things. He's the one who made those waves glow, and somehow, he's the one who led us to go down there. If you just simply hear and follow, God's will can do amazing things, and you can experience life. Just one last one. When I mentioned the whole guitar thing. When I was a sophomore in high school, actually I should start when I was a freshman in high school, I went to this missions trip. And while I was on this missions trip down in Mexico, there was a guy playing the guitar, singing songs. And I've told the band this before, but I don't know if I've told you all this before. Before that week, I hated music. I thought it was pretty weak. My dad was a pastor of a church, and I always wondered why we wasted so much time singing songs before he got up. I always thought, man, we could be home a half an hour earlier if we would just let him stand up and start talking. Then that would be okay. Then, because I didn't like music. I never listened to the music on the radio. I wasn't a fan of just about anything. I liked, from a kid, like from earliest stage, I liked talk radio, but that's weird. So, I never really liked the music, but anyway, I was on this mission trip, and I made a decision that time, and I think this was a prompting from God, where I just decided, listen, I don't like the song, but I'm just going to sing it. And the song was As the Deer from Psalm 42. As the deer pants for streams of water, so my soul longs for you, God. And I decided I was going to sing that song, and the song spoke to me because my heart was longing for God's presence in my life. And the song touched me in a way that I had never experienced before. And so then after that evening, I went up to the guy who was leading the music, and I said, how do you do that thing with the guitar? Could you show me that? And he showed me an E minor chord. I put my fingers there, I strum it, I made the sound. And I played for a little while, and that guy eventually said to me, listen, are you really interested in learning? I said, yeah, I think I am. He said, here, take my guitar. And he gave me his guitar for 6 months to learn and practice. I lived in Victorville, California, which is in the middle of the Mojave Desert. On your way from Los Angeles to Las Vegas, you go through nothing. That's where I'm from. The guitar was from